Hello, my name is Catherine Murphy, and on behalf of the Healthy Materials Lab at Parsons and its directors, Alison Mears and Jongstra Ruth, I'm delighted to welcome you all as we welcome Claudy Jongstra back to Parsons. Claudy Jongstra has had a close relationship with Parsons stretching back almost 10 years. Invited by Jongstra Ruth, who was then the founding director of our MFA ID program, Claudy was the keynote speaker at Aftertaste in 2010. Aftertaste, beginning in 2007, was a symposium dedicated to the critical review of interior design, an opportunity to reflect and look forward on the concept of the interior environment and its constituent elements. 2010 was year one of the MFA ID program, and I was part of that inaugural class, whose role was to design the reception space, made with recycled and natural materials. The Healthy Materials Lab at Parsons is in its fourth year and was created with the mission of dedicating ourselves to a world in which people's health is placed at the center of all design decisions and has a greater value than anything that we could create. A simple and straightforward statement, but the challenges loom large within that realm. Undeterred, though, we're committed to raising awareness about toxics in building products. As much as you are what you eat, you are where you live, work, play, and sleep. So in addition to creating awareness, we see ourselves as facilitators, collecting resources for all generations of designers and architects who want to make healthier places for people to live. We're a resource for all of you, and we encourage you to reach out. Our website will help you navigate your every design challenges. And the Dongia Healthier Materials Library is a physical resource center where you can find material samples, evaluative tools, and in-person support. Follow us on Instagram to get the latest in material science and development with our Material Mondays, which is an insight to a network of designers doing similar health and sustainability focused work. We're delighted once again to host Claudy at Parsons. Her philosophy towards her life and her work and her deep connection to her surroundings is completely aligned with the work that we do at the lab. As you will see in her presentation, the focus is on sustainability, a circular economy, and creating products which are free of toxics. Claudy is committed to the preservation and activation of a natural and a cultural heritage, recreating historical dye recipes from the 15th century, but without the toxic elements that we previously used. Claudy has published this amazing book, which you can buy via this website. And before we welcome Claudy to the stage, we'd just like to show you a short video, and this is its first public screening this evening, which will give a little background on the story that she's about to tell.
Op mijn middelbare school zei ik tegen mijn mentor dat ik heel graag naar de kunstacademie wilde. Die mentor zei, nee, dit is voor jou niet weggelegd. Maar ik voelde mijzelf wel dat ik kunstzinnigheid wilde ontwikkelen. En toen dacht ik ga het toch doen. Iemand zei laatst tegen mij, als ik jou zou mogen definiëren, zou ik bijna tegen jou zeggen dat je een materiekunstenaar bent. Ik denk dat dat wel klopt. Het werk dat ik maak bestaat eigenlijk uit natuurlijke vezels die samen eigenlijk een hele grote dansvoorstelling maken. Ik denk dat de kwaliteit van de natuur en de tinten van de natuurlijkheid dat troost biedt. Want die natuur die heeft geen oordeel, die heeft geen moraliteit, die is onzijdig en die is er alleen maar. De grote gedachte eigenlijk achter het werk is vooral het laten zien van kleuren en materie die eigenlijk niet meer zichtbaar zijn in onze wereld. Rembrandt, Vermeer, Rubens, die maakten ook hun pigmenten met de kleuren waar ik mee verf. En alle culturen van de wereld kennen bijvoorbeeld het blauw, het typische indigo-blauw. Dat wordt bijna niet meer gemaakt, verbouwd. De kennis van het maken van die indigo gaat dus ook verloren. En als we die kleuren niet meer hebben, dan is dat zo Nou, vind ik dat zo jammer, want dat zijn de kostbaarheden van onze aarde, denk ik. Kopen van verfgewassen, dat wordt op de wereldmarkt aangeboden, maar je hebt geen clue waar het vandaan komt. Je kent die boer niet, er worden pesticiden gebruikt, dat zie je terug in de verfstof. Nou, toen dacht ik, nou, we gaan het gewoon zelf doen. En inmiddels is dat dus uitgegroeid tot een community van mensen, niet alleen maar studenten of stagiaires die komen en die zich voor een bepaalde tijd aan ons bedrijf verbinden, maar ook de lokale boeren. Het is een beweging geworden. We verdienen het geld met de kunst. Maar zo zou je het ook niet kunnen benoemen, want het verdienmodel zit ergens anders op. Het zit bijvoorbeeld op dat je een impact geeft aan het landschap. Dat zit in een beweging, het zit in het bewustzijn, het zit in een verandering. Als ik het heb over dat het belangrijk is voor het welzijn van ons allemaal, dat maakt samen dat kunstwerk. En daar zit het verdienmodel. Het brengt heel veel werelden bij elkaar. En dat is eigenlijk best mooi. En als je dat op een manier doet zoals wij dat doen, door toch heel erg serieus naar die aardekwaliteiten te kijken, dat die aarde is de enige plek waar we kunnen wonen met z'n allen. En dat je dat toch een beetje wil borgen, nou ja, dat je dat moet borgen voor je kinderen. Dan is dat mijn bijdrage. Dan heb ik dit te doen.
And now it gives me great pleasure to welcome Claudy Jongstra.
Thank you all for coming. By introduction, you already heard that I have a connection, large connection with Parsons New School, because also since a long time we have the joy to work with students from Parsons. They come to the Netherlands and work on this, this life's work achievement. I come from a fashion background and worked in fashion for many years, not feeling very comfortable with working in fashion because I could not define precisely why that was. But then at a certain moment I saw, after working for some years in fashion, I saw this incredible material, wool. And wool is, it's a beautiful, undescribable material. I saw an exhibition on traditional felt making in the Textile Museum in the Netherlands, and it was completely affected by not only the material, but that it has been in our DNA for so long. People have lived really in woolen shelters for protection and have endured heavy weather circumstances, and wool is an incredible protector. So that was so fascinating. So I quit my job and I started working with wool for, I don't know, in an atelier for 2 years. I did experiments with it, and I noticed that wool has these beautiful qualities. It has a very interesting structure, and because of that structure, wool has this palette of qualities not any other fiber has ever got even close to that. I mean, it's warm in winter, it's cool in summer. It's antibacterial, it's flame retardant. I mean, wool is a genius fiber in itself. Acoustic improvements are incredible also. That is what wool has on its own. So when I worked with this fantastic material, wool, I thought, when I work with wool, why don't I work with maybe a woolen fiber from sheep, maybe very locally grounded. And I discovered that there was a fantastic sheep really originated in the area, in the northern area of the Netherlands, and it's called Drenthe. And these typical sheep, it's the oldest of Northern Europe, but they're very much endangered because only 1,000 left in the world. And we keep 250 of them. And it's very important that they have an environment, a biotope, which really suits them well. But since our landscape has changed so much because of artificial fertilization, the grass and the soil is so rich, and I mean they prefer working. They are natural landscape preservers, and they love to have to live and to work on these heathlands with small bushes and trees. So here you see it's the pinkish part. It's still where this typical land still remains. We had a big part of the Netherlands, we had that very typical land, but only 10% has left. That means also that the reduction of the sheep, but also due to how do you value equality? How do you value wool? Because also introducing synthetic fibers, people have very often no consciousness of that a woolen fiber is very comfortable, it's a fantastic fiber, but it disappears because there is not an awareness about the fantastic qualities of that material. We have a shepherd. What he does is, in a sense, we call it traditional land management. And if you would see a shepherd in the fields with his sheep, it's a beautiful, poetic, visual. But in fact, what he does is it's knowledge in him, coming from his father and grandfather, passing by and working with these sheep on that land, makes that the land has an incredible quality and balance of biotope, and that immediately reflects to the quality of the wool. Sometimes, because we have 250 sheep and we have this stock of these 250, once a year shearing furs, and when we have bigger commissions, we need to buy some wool from another shepherd. And you can see in the quality how they have lived that year. Was there stress, or have there been many transports? Immediately, it's very naked, that wool. You see it immediately, it reflects back in the quality of the wool. Once a year, the wool has been taken off by this shearer, and when you see these big industrial farms, then you see that very often the sheep, they are very sensitive to stress, and the shearing is the most stressful moment in a year, because I think you can imagine if you have this protector with you all year and it's taken off, all of a sudden you are in a completely different constellation. And our shepherds, they keep the sheep then in quarantine for a few weeks, small groups, and then they go into the bigger flock, because they need to have the time to adjust to this new circumstance and atmosphere. So taking care of that process also of shearing, and very attentful, not feeling stressed by time and time-consuming processes, that's something which is really very important in what we do. So after these 2 years working with wool in my atelier and developing structures and textiles, I worked only in natural materials. The first, I'm doing this for 20 years now. The first, I think, 10 years was only with natural wool in the colors the sheep really provided. I made rugs, I made small pieces, and started making textures really very close to the nature of the wool. The material is a really it's a beautiful canvas. So I started showing my work also during design fair in Milano, and there was this first commission with architects, and also on the right you see a collaboration with Hella Jongerius, the famous Cassese chair, making these finding my way in design, art, architecture, and just a bit warming up. Below you see a work 2 years ago. I made all of natural materials in the SF MoMA. It was an installation when celebrating the reopening of SF MoMA. Here you can see also a play with textures refined. On the right it's a corporate building in the Netherlands. There is a fantastic space in the Netherlands on the right below. It's a governmental palace, and people do meetings there. And the acoustic is like in a cathedral, because the material is so incredibly genius. So you have, when you are in a space completely fulfilled with wool, you feel totally different, because it connotates to, for example, a clay environment. It's very natural. And on the left, starting already working a bit with colors, is a work for a cemetery in Rotterdam, and it's a work placed between glass. It was my first work between glass, because it separated the space where family has withdrawn itself in that circumstance, and the other space was when friends and relatives came over. So placing the work in between glass seems maybe a bit contradictory, but there was it's a fantastic quality in this construction. So it made it possible for us now also to place works in a very in an environment where you have heavily a lot of people come there, traffic jammed areas as airports, because people are attending when you see that work. I mean, they want to touch it, and it's so sensitive and so sensual that you are really drawn to it. This is a work I worked with Todd Williams and Ménitier Architects. This is a firm from New York, and they are currently working on the Obama Center. With them, we did a project for the Barnes Museum in Philadelphia, and it took us 3 years to develop these monochromes, these textures in that light court, because the light changes through the day. So the work had to be in relationship with the marble. And when it was finished, there was big harmony between the hardware, you could say the hard stone, and the soft tactility of that whitish monochrome textile. Works in rhythms, in textures. There's a work in the Kunsthal, the Koolhaas building. Also, just being there, people very often say when I make a work that it easily takes its place in the building. It's never, it has not a shouting voice. It's just there. It takes its place very. Silent, and I think that the reason for that is because it's because of its natural color, but also of its natural quality. After that long period of working with the material in just neutrals, by accident I found the incredible vitality and color palette of the natural dyes. When I saw that, I immediately was it really made a big connection with me, and I also understood, because in that time when I worked only with neutrals, I had a big resistance working with synthetic colors, because that was not my idiom. So I was very uncomfortable working with these colors, because, but I didn't have any reason for that, because I love color. But seeing and experiencing the natural dyes, I immediately recognized it's a complete different language. So the first years in my studio practice, we just experimented with dyes and made recipes. Now, developing these colors for the last decade, I would say, we work together with universities, and we really, it's very interesting to discover these fantastic recipes in these books of secrets. Recipes we translate in historical reconstructions in the dye workshop, and making these incredible contemporary palettes. As you saw in the movie, we grow the crops. This is the farm. We started the farm a few years ago because, it's so important that you decide yearly which color palette you can use, and also seeing not only the botany, but also working in it and harvesting makes it you're really connected to the material. So the land you can see on the right is really tough. It's in the north, but due to the combination of that incredible soil and the light, we have a fantastic light quality in the north because of the influence of the sea. Makes that combination of soil and light makes that some crops like indigo really do well in that area. A glass house, also a very, it's a historical one from Belgium, we built last year, and it gave us the possibility to grow from seed to small plants these kind of crops, because you can imagine it's really there is really rough weather. I mean, the Netherlands is really flat, so we have a lot of wind and rain. So the glass house gave us the opportunity and space to prepare small crops for farmers we work with now in the north. So yearly we have these 10 to 15 variations in botany. We harvest, we grow, and then we work together with, you can see on the map, now with a cooperation of 8 to 10 farmers in the north. And we do that because for us it's very important to not only to connect directly to the material, to the sources, but also in that where we live and work, there is a lot of monoculture, and by working together with these farmers and to motivate them to grow different crops with not only dye qualities or medicinal qualities, but also how can you stimulate biodiversity in that land we live in, is just making it really visible also for the farmers to have an interest maybe in alternative crops. On the right you see a palette of color ranges coming from plants from an island, also in the north. The island is called Vlieland. We just did an art project there. We just foraged outside on that island. These, that habitat was just there, and you see there is a palette of color nearly coming out of every plant you can imagine. Also, what we do in the farm, and this is what we recently are developing with academies, master students. We did a project with a famous fashion school in the Netherlands, Artes, and we developed that program for the last 2 years. International master students came over for a week, and we made this program called Rooted Textiles. So we grew the flax, and we made, we developed flax yarns, linen from the plant. You can see also the tools on the right to a fiber, and that is something really important to be integrated in these curriculums, because also fashion designers very often don't know. Or they are not connected to the material they work with. And even finding, these tools was very hard. I mean, we found like 3 people over 85 still having that knowledge of, digesting that fiber into a woven fabric. So more and more we will divide these kind of programs in our studio practice, in our farm, with architectural students and students from several universities to reconstruct, you could say, historical practices. The color welt is one of the oldest colors, most famous dye plants in the history, and when you use that plant, you use from the welt, you use stem, leaf, flower, you use everything. So other plants, sometimes you only use the roots or the leaf or the flower. And you see 17th century painters, they also used these kind of pigments, and it's a very bright yellow. We make textures, we make rugs. We're doing a collaboration with Meharem. And on the right side, you see it is a very spectacular architectural ornament in a building. It's an elevator, so it gives really warmth to spaces, and it's really it's very important. Especially this is a library in Luxembourg. Especially the educational part is a big. It's also major. We could say topic in our studio practice. Another library in Amsterdam, we did many years ago, very textured. We reconstructed an historical knotting technique from the 17th century. We just enlarged it, we scaled it up, and you get these incredible knots. And people are very tempted to also to touch it, that wall. I know it's fine, but what is important about the work that it's. I mean, when you are a curious person, you will ask yourself questions. What is the material made out of? I mean, very often we hear that people never saw these colors because they're not in our environment anymore. This is a work. It's a permanent work here in New York. It's the Lincoln Center, the Rubenstein Atrium. We work together also with Todd Williams and Medicien on this project. First we did the right wall, and there were acoustic panels with that material, and then when we installed, usually we also install with our own team. It was so well received that we immediately were commissioned also to do the other wall where the screen is on. And in this specific work we have hand hand knotted techniques, hand embroideries, hand spun yarns. It's all about, it's very much about, time consuming processes. And but if you are, of course we work with deadlines, but since we have everything in house, so we have the farm and we have people who have who are very who understand the material with their hands, with their knowledge hands. We are very often quite. The lead time of a project people are very often surprised by it, because we are very independent, so we never have to wait for suppliers. And a project like this, the manufacturing of it was, I think, 3 months only. Universities in London, Queen Mary, all about the texture and the tactility, about cultural heritage, natural dyes. I would say, as a bridge, it's a bridge between legacy and future generations. Boat is also a color we work with a lot. It's the European variety of the indigo. It's very complex, making a blue color. From the Asian indigo, but also from the European. When you harvest the woad, you have to chop it, and then it has to ferment. It takes, I think, months that it dries, and then when you dry, you get this fermented object, and the color remains in that fermented ball for 400 or 500 years. So it's very sustainable. You see, the indigo has this fantastic quality. It goes well with this China earthenware, but also in historical buildings here in the Fries Museum, or in contemporary spaces. The work really takes its place very naturally. This was a project we did recently, also with the indigo for Maison Margiela. It was on the fashion show Haute Couture in July this year. We worked, you cannot believe it, but we worked on that coat for 6 months. And John Giuliano was completely seduced by indigo, but also he found it very important that we show this natural indigo on a podium like this, because also for the legacy, but also the making of indigo is very complex. And in a sense, taking his role as a role model very seriously. So that was for us a fantastic collaboration, and working with him was really, really a big joy. This is the biggest work ever made. It's the University of Pennsylvania, Philadelphia. It's a triptych. This is the large piece is 16 meters by 6. So wool felt is a shrinking process. So you can imagine that you have to make like an incredible big scale piece. This tapestried wall has also a lot of textures and hand embroidery. We made it, we rented a school, big school, empty school in the northern part of the Netherlands, and we made it on the floor, so we never saw it actually hanging because there was no space around us having this size wall. It was really also a very bit of exciting moment seeing, that piece coming down, but it really warmed into space, and it is really, it has so many stories in itself. The concept for the work was how would you experience a library? And library is about knowledge. So the knowledge is represented by the indigo. There are a lot of sources. You could say neutral sources that represents the neutral part. And when you combine knowledge and sources, when you don't have empathy or the ability to connect, then there is no transformation. So the gold, the warmth of the golden colors, they represent the empathy. This is also work recently in a restaurant in the Netherlands. This restaurant has a garden. It's, of course, beautiful farm-to-table concept, but literally they make a big effort of that garden workable, also with education projects. And we thought it was beautiful because it's an empty factory, to have really a vertical garden in that space, reflecting how landscape and crops really physically can be experienced. And these are fabrics hanging in the space, so making divisions, but also make it intimate, because it's very raw at the building and gives also a lot of warmth in that space. This is the work made for the U.S. Embassy in Wassenaar, The Hague. When we were commissioned by the art committee in DC, they explicitly said, please make an artwork very autonomous, any mesh it's possible. So the work is called transformation processes, and it's all about the indigo, because indigo, when you make an indigo color, then the color doesn't come on the fiber in the dye pot, but when you take it out of the dye pot and air comes to it, by oxidation, the color comes to the fiber. It's really like a magical process. So in the work, there's a lot of indigo, and it really stands as a metaphor for transformation processes, mentally transformation processes. I think more than 10,000 hand stitches, details in that work, and you already see a small introduction of a very famous color the Netherlands was famous for. It's called the madder. The madder is a plant. We use the root of it, and the root is it takes 3 years of growing and 2 years of drying. So it takes 5 years for you have this incredible color, and that color is there's no comparison in any color coming close to madder. It's a jewel. It's really it has such a richness and vitality and ripeness coming out of that root. In the 17th century, it was a major export product, and the countryside had these barns for 2 years of drying, and it was grown in the south, but also in the north, where I live now. It's because of that specific soil. You see already also down that Van Eyck also used the madder. So Antwerp was very famous for textile industry and natural dyeing, and you could say the waste of this textile industry went to the painters. Madder projects here, restaurants, you see a palette of color. This is a rug we made for a very famous actor, Brad Pitt. So sometimes we all have also these kind of clients. Usually we don't know who they are, but when we have the commission, and then afterwards the gallery says, you made the work for Adele or Brad Pitt or whatever. So it's also very funny. So the color palettes, they can be so intense. It's a carding process. You see these materials having a scheme of intentions, and we have a lot of students from all over the world working or connecting themselves to a typical research program, and sometimes we can develop like 500 different tones, for example, coming out of madder or St. John's wort or chamomile, and working together with now with the University of Utrecht is so interesting because we have access now to these old manuscripts, and we recently made a big innovation. We had made after a year a natural black, and in the 15th century the dyers made the black out of madder and also indigo, but they used this very toxic iron, and we replaced the iron now for walnut, and now we have this incredible intense, you can say a warm black, and for us it was a really big innovation. This work was developed, first ideas 3 years ago. I thought, I had the wish to make an autonomous work, not a commissioned work, expressing ecology, tacit knowledge, and also community. So the name is Woven Skin. It was shown here the last weekend at ADO in Brooklyn. Due to Climate Week, this work was brought here. It will travel all over the world. It was also in Palermo, because Palermo, there was an art fair. There's still an art fair going on. It's called Manifesta. But Palermo Sicily is the island where migration really worked well. I mean, people have recognized qualities of migrants in an extraordinary way. So when the Woven Skin travels, we organize panel discussions. We did yesterday evening at ADO, but also at Palermo we organized workshops, skill building workshops with migrants, just to recognize their incredible qualities, and you can say they are our living sources. Yesterday evening, this was Palermo, was really fantastic. We had a panel with Corinna Gore and Billy Thier and Matthew Beard, but also a soccer player from Philadelphia, CJ Sapong, who started his project called Sacred Seeds, also about potentials in crops, but also about food, about fertility in life. I mean, people I've known for a long time, sharing the same philosophy and values. Woven Skin is on its way now to Stormont Center outside of New York, because we will do programming there with Dan Barber, with food waste is the topic. So this weekend we will be there, and it will be shown outside. And then after leaving Stonebarn Center, we plan to have the Woven Skin traveling to Portland next year. So it has been an intense tour, also still open for possible locations representing the qualities I think we stand for: ecology care, tacit knowledge, transferring knowledge. I mean, to recognize the fantastic qualities of the past and community, because I think inclusivity is very important. Thank you.